Darkness enveloped the cold concrete room like a midnight mist, while a dim, flickering artificial light cast eerie shadows on the walls. Wrapped in a stiff, scratchy blanket, I clutched my knees tightly to my chest. My feet slid across the surface of the thin blue plastic mattress as a haunting sound echoed all around me. Are you okay, love? A woman's voice called out, struggling to be heard above the strange noise, which I came to realise was my own anguish wailing. I tried to silence myself, but the echoes of my cries continued to reverberate through the cold cell, bouncing off the pale blue walls that stretched high above me to a distant ceiling. Please, I found myself yelling, please, please give me my boys back.
Wow, that's some opener. Okay there. Hi, Sam. That's an extract from your new book,
It is,
Pretended
yeah,
Justice, which is out this weekend, I believe.
correct.
And we're here to talk about it. And we're here to talk about your writing process. And we're here to talk a bit about your campaigning and your life in general. So, Sam, I know that you've always been an avid reader, but you were never actually a writer before you wrote your first book. So, do you want to tell me a little about why you decided to write a book to begin with?
That's right, Trina. Well, besides knowing that there's nothing like this on the market anywhere else, there's not really many fictional books about the family court and about the systems that surround it. Besides that, I felt like there was a real calling on my life to do something like this. So I just poured my heart and soul into it.
No, I think you're absolutely right. There's some biographical stuff on family courts, but there's very few novels
That's right.
with the main character set in that world. And I know that's certainly what attracted me to working with you because it's quite a unique prospect and it's quite an important it's a really important subject, eh? So I think it's wonderful that you've written not one but two novels now
Right.
set in that world.
Yeah.
So now, everything's going to be okay. Was your first novel? It was a resounding success. I think over 500 five-star reviews on Amazon, which
Yeah.
is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And many authors, including myself, are very, very jealous of that statistic. So tell me, why did you decide to write a second?
I felt there was more to Amanda's story. I felt there was a lot more where we could go, and sure enough, there was. And also, I was asked so many times, when is the next book coming out? When is the sequel? By so many people that I just felt I had to, even though the subject matter was obviously very emotive and difficult to write about, I knew I just had to just face it and just get it done. And yeah, I'm hoping it will be as successful as the first one and impact as many people as the first one.
Yeah, well, I definitely felt there was more to Amanda's story than where we left her because where we left her was in many ways the beginning of the story, and book two really looks at the following years for Amanda and everything she goes through trying to get her children back and all the different state bodies that are involved in her life and the life of her family and all the trauma. It's a very, very traumatic book. I think it's
Absolutely.
fair to say. And I guess it's a very traumatic subject.
It really
So
is, yeah.
it truly is. It truly is. So tell me, were you disciplined in your approach to writing the book? Did you write it every day or did you write it in stops and starts? How did you approach it?
Well, I started off with good intentions. However,
Mm.
that tailed off after a few weeks when I had around that time various legal applications going on in the background, appeals, um, other applications that did take up a lot of my time. And the consistency really only kicked in towards the latter part of writing the book, in which over which time I did become consistent in that I would make sure that I picked it up most days. Over these last few months, there was a gap in between, like I said, and part of that was due to um, focusing on other things. But then when I realized, look, I need to get this book finished and, I need to be consistent about this. So not necessarily disciplined, but having that consistency that I strive to always have in different aspects of my life anyway. It's just good to apply that to the book because you're not always going to feel amazingly motivated. No one is. So it's just about being consistent, even if you can just do half an hour that day or an hour, and just work in short bursts, which I quite often did, or in just 2 hours. But yeah, it's possible to anyone who's got a busy life and they want to read, they want to write a book. It really is possible to do it just by pressing on and just keeping at it.
I think it's particularly admirable when you're self-published because you don't have a publisher or an editor breathing down your neck demanding, work to be handed in. It really falls on you entirely to do it. And you did it, eh? You absolutely did it. So tell me, how did you find the editing process? I know a bit about this because I'm of course your editor, but
Yeah.
how did you find that? That's generally a tough process for writers.
Well, I found it very easy and straightforward because you obviously worked with me a lot in my first book, where you were more than just an editor, but writing coach, and you really did help me enormously with the first book. So this time you were editing it, and it was good to have your clarity as well, with you having some knowledge of the family court system as well, rather than just an editor who doesn't have any knowledge of the family court system and the surrounding bodies, which obviously the novel was set around. Um, so and yeah, I just found it easy. Like you'd make your edits, sometimes editing out large chunks of the book, but then I'd look back and think, yeah, actually that wasn't needed, or that is too complicated. So yeah, I found it an easy process, and it all went very
That's
well.
an interesting take. There's very few writers out there who would use the words easy to describe the editing process. But then I guess, you know what, the material itself was so harrowing, perhaps that the most difficult thing for you was writing it
Yeah, absolutely.
originally, and that editing it was possibly, as you say, a bit easier. So what was your favorite part of writing it, Sam?
The favorite part, because I've obviously written the first book, so I'm not there yet with this one, but the favorite part is releasing it and seeing the effect it has on people, and the satisfaction of having, actually having the books arriving, which I've now got my own like boxes of books now, freshly ready to deliver. So that is by far the most satisfying aspect. Seeing the book, seeing the end result of all these months and months of, really difficult to write at times. Um, and then just seeing people buying it, reading it, enjoying it, hopefully like they will be the first one. So the enjoyment for me, I can't say it's an enjoyable process because of the harrowing content of the books, both of them. So I didn't enjoy it at the time, but the satisfaction coming afterwards after publishing it is brilliant.
It is. There's something quite awesome about just holding a book you've written in your hands. It's something only authors can appreciate, but it really is. I think an every author's favorite moment, quite frankly, is holding that the first time your books arrive and you hold a book and you think, wow, look at that. And you see it, you see the title, you see your name, all of it, and you go, wow, look at that. I did that. And you did that, Sam.
And
I
I mean,
love the
it was
title so
literally
much.
my like, I never thought in a million years that I would write a book. If you took me back like 10 years plus ago, there was no way I would ever imagine in my wildest dreams that I'd write a book.
And now you've written two.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So the title, Sam, I absolutely love the title, Pretended Justice. It's a Socrates quote. Um,
Plato, I think, isn't it?
Plato, is it Plato?
Yeah.
Right here. Yeah. You was one of the boys knew it was. And it's perfect. I think it's a perfect title for a book whose subject material centers around family court, because I think so many people's experience of family court would fall under literally that idea that not only is it terribly unjust and unfair, but it exists within a veneer of well, pretend justice or pretended justice, as you
Yeah,
said. You know,
absolutely. Where reality changes,
hmm
this is
and it certainly
true.
does
That's
for
not
Amanda. There's there's no question. You get a real sense, of all of it through Amanda's story. Through this average, ordinary mom who just really all she wants to do is raise her kids, and all the barriers that she faces to that most basic of human desires to raise the children you've birthed. So tell me, what was the hardest part, or have we covered that? I think we've
So the
possibly covered
hardest part was actually facing it and writing about it, especially there are certain parts which, having gone through family court myself and still, maybe not finished there, but very harrowing to kind of, just imagine what the central character Amanda's going through and the children. And yeah, I think it was fairly triggering, I must admit, writing it. So it was just about being kind to yourself and just writing it in small bits and creating a nice environment when you're writing a book, lighting scented candles and that kind of thing, just making it as nice as possible and as pleasant, and just to face up about the heartbreaking content that you're writing about, the injustice and the craziness of family court and the surrounding bodies and experts. The mind boggles. It's like a circus. So it was very difficult at times.
Okay. So tell me, do you have any tips for aspiring writers out there? What would you say to somebody who is sitting at home right now thinking, you know what, I've got a story, I'd like to write a book, or I've always wanted to write a novel? What would you say to them?
I would just say go for it. Don't overthink it. I would say just start off by writing the main points and then expanding on them until you've got all the information out there on paper. And then you need really a writing coach. There's ChatGPT is not going to help you if you're a writer. It can take you a little. It can improve work, but you can't get that finesse that a writing coach and editor provides. So I would say find a good writing coach and editor to find you, and just do it, and just look at, take it one day at a time and be consistent, and don't look at why you shouldn't do it, but just focus on the end goal and how you'll feel afterwards, because you're not, as I said before, you're not going to feel motivated every day to do it. Just do it and focus ahead.
Awesome. And I think what I would add to that is if you can at all join a writing group, whether it's online or in person. I think I know that wasn't for you for all kinds of reasons, but in general, being part of a writing group means you're hanging out with other people who are attempting the same or a similar goal, and that can be very motivating. And it can also just be very heartening to have people that are attempting the same thing. So I mean, I'm pretty much always in a writing group myself, and I think writing groups are a real stable in a writer's life, because writing can be quite a lonely occupation, by necessity. Really, you can't write with anyone, but having a writing group can be quite validating and can be really good, I think, for feedback, and if you're trying new stuff. Yeah, I think writing groups can be terribly helpful. Um, Okay, Sam, I think that's us more or less covered a lot of the essential writing stuff, except of course the biggest question of all: when is the book out, and where can people get it?
So the book is out now. So
Now,
this will be when this video goes out, it will be out. This is recorded ahead of time, but by the time of this, the book will actually be out. And so you can actually get the book on the website, which is samanthebaldwin.co.uk. All the links to the books are in there. You can buy it from you can buy it internationally. However, it's on Amazon as well. So I understand you might not want to wait and pay that same postage as you would have to pay if you bought it through my website. But certainly for people in the UK, oh yeah, if you can support me by buying from the website, it does help a great deal than buying it from Amazon. It's available paperback and ebook format, and hopefully in the future audio format as well for both books.
wow. Okay, so Ideally, especially from the UK, you'd like people to buy it from your website. If they can't do that, or if they're abroad, they can buy it on Amazon. If they'd rather read it in ebook form, they can buy it as an ebook. And it is actually out. Beautiful, beautiful. Um, okay, Sam. So now I'd like to ask you a bit about the other stuff you do. When you're not an author, you're actually a quite well known campaigner for family court reform and to raise awareness of pedophilia, especially in family courts, and satanic ritual abuse. Again, especially what happens when that's put before the family courts. Do you want to tell me a little about your campaigning, why you got into that, and why you continue to do it?
Sure, Trina. Yeah, the motivation behind that came from obviously being from losing custody of my children, my boys, and that began in the campaign or the exposure began in 2019 um, after a High Court judge banned me from making any contact applications with my sons for 4 years. So I thought, well, clearly that's the door shut for a few years. I have to do something about this. I have to raise awareness at least, and you know, let my children know that I'm fighting for them. Let them know that I'm disgusted by what the horrific family court have done to them and other children. It's an absolute abomination. It messes up so many lives, and they're just getting away with literally murder because many children have died as a result of family court placing them in the care of abusers when the children have been very explicitly clear about who the abuser is and who the safe parent is. And, you know, often they'll just completely turn justice on its head so that the perpetrator becomes the safe parent in the court's estimations, and the protective parent becomes vilified and is slammed with all kinds of false findings. And they don't need any evidence to do any of this whatsoever. It's an absolute, I wouldn't even call it a joke because it's not funny at all. It's absolutely horrific, but it's like one big sick joke. If people truly know how they made their decisions, they will just be appalled. So I just think it falls in the hands of people who have suffered at the hands of the court, or those who know, who are connected to people who have done so. And we're the ones who are exposing it. There's lots of us doing exposure, and there's people fighting to change legislation. There's different people are doing different things, and it's so good that awareness is being raised and legislations are attempted to be changed. So I've a lot of people just doing their own bit really, but and my, this writing book seems to be part of my journey in exposing family courts and raising awareness. I did a lot more a few years ago, just interviewing people and creating video content and just spreading the word about it. And it's what it has opened a lot of people's eyes up to the system. And the worse the abuse, the more likelihood you have of losing custody of your children. The more the family court will turn on you.
Okay, so wow. Do you want to just say that again, Sam? Because that sounds so shocking, and I just want people to hear that the greater the abuse the children have suffered,
Yeah.
that the safe parent reports, the greater chance the safe parent will lose custody of their children.
Yeah, that's correct, Trina. And it's actually been proven this by extensive research that was carried out by Professor Joe Meyer in America. And the systems are very similar over here, pretty much the same as it is in America. So we can use that as a example of how our courts are going. But let's say if there was think about 1,000 people involved in this study over a period of 10 years, ending in 2017, I think, or 2020. And so there's varying degrees of abuse, right from what they categorize as domestic abuse against the, let's say, the safe parent, which in most cases was the mother, and And then you got the reported child abuse, or a mixture of both domestic abuse and child abuse. And the child abuse was categorized into different categories, um, from physical abuse, child sex abuse, and then I think it was categorized into three categories. And the worst one being the child sex abuse combined with child physical abuse. Um, and they all lost custody of the children. And if the dangerous parent, the abuser, counterclaims with parental alienation syndrome, then that doubles the risk again of losing custody, of having false findings against you, and all the negative that comes through the family court. So again, that is a massive problem. But yeah, so you can imagine, my sons start disclosing, and they're disclosing sexual abuse, they're disclosing abuse by many people. I hadn't heard about satanic ritual abuse at this point, but it didn't take long to find out that's what it was. And after their disturbing disclosures about all these people and all these rituals taking place, then obviously if your child discloses SRA or ritual abuse, then that pretty much is you've lost custody of your children. And yeah, the cases that I know of pretty much, there's the Hampstead case, and then there's a case in America which highlighted this, ended in the death of a little boy called Tommy. And that's the only reason why the mother got custody back of her two surviving sons, was because of Tommy's death, revealing that the father and his new girlfriend were horrifically abusing the boys along with other people. And it all came out, albeit they were never prosecuted for the SRA side of things. It's all been documented during counselling of the two surviving boys. One of them disclosed ritual abuse, child trafficking, cages. I won't go into it all now, but massive amounts of money were
stuff.
being
Yeah.
transferred. Hundreds of thousands of pounds were being deposited into the father's account. He was a New York police officer, NYPD police officer, and so the judge, immediately switched custody to the father. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to prove a thing. They just have to say, no, I didn't do it, and she's an alienator, or she's, and they can just make things up, and the judge will automatically. And this is how things are, and this is the information that I strive to get out there, because people just think it, surely not, that just must be a bad judge or a one-off. But unfortunately, most of these judges are handing over custody to the perpetrator for some reason.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you mentioned parental alienation syndrome there, and I know, I know of more than one mom who has lost custody and been accused of parental alienation syndrome. But that's been completely discredited in sort of modern psychological and psychiatric circles, and it only continues to be used in the family courts. And it's a theory by Richard Gardner.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us a bit more about that? Because I think that's
Yeah.
a massive thing in family courts.
Yeah, absolutely. So Richard Gardner coined this term first in the 1980s in America, and he has very questionable beliefs. He believes that everybody has a bit of paedophile in them. He's made assertions which are in the back of, it's all documented in the back of my book, the summary of his beliefs in the back of my first book, Everything's Going to Be Okay. I cover it in there. He had some very disturbing sexual beliefs about children, about animals, all kinds of sordid things. He actually he recommended that if a child, so his idea of a good mother would be, if a child discloses abuse of the father, then a good mother would say, don't you dare speak about your dad like that, or I'll hit you, and that was he actually, there's a recording of him saying that and actually smiling as he's saying it in a very sinister, sadistic way. But he was advocating for children to be sent even to a cell for the night if they dare to disclose and that kind of thing. He really was very against any woman speaking up about the abuse of the father, and even suggested that the woman mustn't be satisfying the husband properly if he has to do that to his child. So he's kind of just saying it's fine actually. But yeah, so this is the man who family court are still basing their horrific kind of mentality on and their horrific kind of way of, dealing with things. And it's the most sinister thing of all is that it's all shrouded in best interests of the child. And it couldn't be anything further from the truth.
I think a lot of the time there is the presumption, isn't there, of contact at all costs. And that will very, very often not be in the best interest of the child. Because I think any mom who, or parent, but most of the time it does tend to be mothers who goes through the trauma of family court doesn't do so lightly. I mean, it's not an easy process, it's not a cheap process, it's not an enjoyable process. You're handing over some of your own power and autonomy as a parent to the courts. And women who do that do so because they're desperate. They're absolutely desperate to protect their children.
Yeah, or in my
And
case, I wasn't the one who went to family court. It was my ex-husband. Well, he knew what he was doing. He'd obviously heard about a lot of them obviously hear on the grapevine that family court are pro child abusers and other kinds of abusers, and they use them and continue to do so, and but they know they'll be protected. Yeah, they know that even if they do get a decent judge, they know that they will still get to see the children at the very least. Um,
yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's terribly recent. You right now, I think possibly going through the courts or going through Parliament is a law to stop the most serious paedophiles who have been convicted of the most serious crimes from having automatic access to the children. So that's like literally the worst end of the scale. If somebody has been convicted, there is a chance they mightn't see their child. That's the type of legislation they're talking about bringing in right now. So that'll give you some idea of how far behind we are, because obviously every sane person in the real world would immediately, if they identified a paedophile anywhere in their circle, would want to keep that sort of person as far away from their children as possible. You
Absolutely. And
know,
I don't even know whether, sadly, it's just we're behind, or whether we're actually, has the system been designed this way? Is it doing its job as they intended? Because it's so horrific what goes on that you can't help but think that, they're not just making mistakes, they know what they're doing. And how we stop this, I do not know, but I do think it will become apparent. But at the moment, paedophiles have many, many, many more rights than I do.
which is just horrific to hear the loving mom of two children say that. And to know it's true, quite frankly, to know, I know your story well, and I know so many similar stories. And I've personally been through the courts. I was an awful lot luckier than you were. But, it took a long time. And yeah, I saw a lot of corruption and an awful lot of really bad decisions. An awful lot of people making money on the back of my need to protect my child and my child's vulnerability. An awful lot of bad stuff, but nothing that, compares to what you've witnessed and to what some of the women you campaign with and the people you campaign with have witnessed and experienced. And yeah, the more people, now with alternative media, we're finally hearing more and more of these stories, and more survivors and more parents who've been through this are speaking up. And I do think slowly, the reality is entering public consciousness, and there will be a tipping point. There absolutely will be a tipping point and hopefully we're closer to it than we ever have been.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, I salute your bravery, Sam. I really do. I think what you're doing is so very brave. You know, I know you've got an awful lot of online abuse and a lot of trolling and an awful lot of harassment
Yeah.
for standing up for your
Yeah.
children. But I also know that you are one of the most determined, unstoppable human beings I've ever met, and that nothing will stand in the way of you speaking up for your boys and their right to have their mum in their lives. And
Absolutely.
their right, you know, even more importantly, to be protected from dangerous bastards, I suppose.
Yeah.
Probably
Absolutely.
edit that out, everybody, but there you go. That's what we're dealing
No,
with.
it's
Very, very
fine.
dangerous
Fine.
people. Yeah.
Fine. Yeah, it's the trolling is nothing. It's nothing. It's an indicator of how these vile, evil people, because when they know what's happened and they're trolling me, then they're either involved or they're just pure evil. But yeah, I just ignore them because they want attention as well. But no, nothing's going to stand in the way of me, getting the truth out there and, doing what I can to expose the truth. And, I will continue to do so. And, you know, the truth will prevail in the end. It may take a long time, but like this has done, but I will get there. I do believe that.
And tell me, if people want to support you, if they want to support your campaign, or if they want to know more about your campaign, where can they go or what can they do?
If anything does become apparent, I will be publishing it on my website, which is samanthebaldwin.co.uk. And yeah, we'll see where this goes, because like I say, I do think it'll become apparent about which legislation needs to change, because I'm just not sure yet. I think the parental alienation laws will assist, but they're not going to eradicate the problem, because they'll just come up with another term instead. Um, but yeah, I do believe that something massive needs to change. I just don't know what yet, but we'll keep on pressing forward until that becomes apparent.
Okay, but if people want to know more about your story or more about what they do, they can visit you at samanthebaldwin.co.uk.
Yeah,
And of
that's
course, they can buy your novel, Pretended Justice, and that will certainly give them a very good idea of the system and what happens to the main character in that book is very atypical, tragic, horrific, and awful, but also, quite frankly, atypical of the journey of a protected mother.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's certainly an eye opener, and it's my wish that it will just get to the right people, um, as well as the first book as well. That the right people will read the book, and it will help somehow.
Okay. Okay. Well, listen, Sam, it has been just beautiful talking to you today. It's always lovely to talk to you. And I'm so excited for people to read Pretended Justice. I think it's a great book. I think you've done a fantastic job. I think Amanda's a legend, just a glorious character. I love her. I love her strength and I love her story, and I wish you all the success with it.
Thank you very much.